Zach.
What is going on today, guys? So today we picked up a 1995 Ford Mustang 3.8 V6 T5, and right now we're getting all the disgusting gross bits off of it before we work on it. So we're probably going to steal some parts from this car, and then I'll probably end up parting it out because it's got it for about 850 bucks, but it has a full exhaust, so I can scrap the exhaust. But who knows, I might try to throw a starter on this and see if it runs. But this thing is immaculate, and Cody is up there blasting away. As you can see, this car sat for at least 5 years, but it is pretty much all there. The guy said it needs a starter. We'll see, but we're gonna get it at least cleaned off, get all the gross bits and bobs off. It's got some nice wheels on there. Like I said, it's got a full exhaust and pretty clean. So we're gonna get working on it, and we're gonna see what we get. It's been a minute, but we have a new project car. So after the Ranger kind of was looking to get some things cleaned up, and we ended up with this. This is a 95 V6. It does have a stick. This car's actually like stupid clean for what it is. It needs a starter, probably more issues to follow with that, but we don't know. With that being said, though, this car was undercoated. It's had fuel lines, brake lines done, and to be honest, I think I'm gonna end up keeping this one over my green one. So I was going through with Cody, my buddy, to think about what if it would make sense for me to keep this one as opposed to the green one. The green one needs a lot of work. It was hitting the front. The frame rails were kind of screwed up a little bit, so everything's just slightly off. Every single body line of this car is perfect. You know, there's a couple nicks, a couple scratches, and the paint's pretty trash from, I'll probably post a couple pictures of when we were blasting this off at the car wash. But beyond that, I mean, this thing is like insanely straight. I don't think it's ever been in an accident. It's got a green title, which is cool. And to be honest, it's already a 5-speed, so that's half my problems gone right there. It is the wrong motor, but that being said, it kind of gets me to my next line of thought. Is the green car is a 4.6 car. So it's a 4.6 car. It has a TR 3650 in it. That is kind of a little bit of a challenge because I'm going to have to work out a lot more of the electronic stuff to get that motor to fire and all that other stuff. And to be honest, it still needs a ton of work. With that being said, I'm kind of more leaning into getting like an Explorer 302 for this car, and kind of making this much more simple because 302s are easy. I've got the 302 in the Fox body. It runs great. It's no issues at all. And that's kind of more what I was leaning towards with this project. So what we're going to do though is none of that as of yet. I ordered a starter. It's showing up late as always. I am actually going to spend a little bit of time today teaching myself how to buff. So we went and picked up one of these from Harbor Freight, picked up some Meguiar's Ultimate Compound, and as you can see, a lot of this in the paint, it's not super great. But with that being said, if I come down here, for example, where a lot of the moss was in that, this is so smooth. I mean, it's like mirror-like down here, and the paint is actually in really good shape. The hood, not so much, but these hoods are fiberglass. They all kind of get that way. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time seeing if I can go through and start cutting through a lot of the garbage that's in this paint, see if we can get it to really pop and come back. So that's at least where I'm leaning at as of right now, but who knows? We'll see. Maybe we don't keep the car, maybe we do. Let's find out. Okay, after scrounging around and I did one test pass, this is what we're looking at comparatively. And you can even see how bad the oxidation is outside of that, and then where I go on there. This also, if you can see, wipes nice and easily. This, you can hear it. It's crunchy. It gets, your hand gets stuck on it. Very, very different. So I did end up actually using this stuff, which I've had. I probably bought it on clearance, 78 years ago. But with that being said, this is 110. It looks like it's extra heavy cut on there. It looks like, yeah, it's for heavy cutting. Yeah, quickly removes 1200 grit or finer sanding marks. Easy wipe off. Virtually zero dust or sling. Yada, 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 so on and so forth. So with that being said, I am just going to continue to slowly work the pad. Just kind of hitting the pad up like this right here. Right now I need to double check to make sure I've got this on the correct setting, but I'm slowly going to work the rest of this fender. This is just a little bit of sling on there. You see it just wipes off, but we're going to continue to work this. I did wash the car initially, and then it sat outside overnight. That's pretty much it, but we're going to see how this turns out after we keep buffing it, see if we can really bring back a lot of the color on this. Well, after some trial and error, here she is. So you can see comparatively how bad it is. Now ignore the door, you hit the door a little bit, but you see how bad a lot of this is? Right here, as you can see how destroyed the paint is. I did try a little bit of a wool pad right here, so we'll see if we can continue to get that buffed out. But this one turned out absolutely fantastic. And we actually continued through most of the door, but I still need, and you can, here's a great example of it, where it's like this is nice and good, terrible. And you can even see right there as the difference that the compound is doing. So I'm done for today at least. I'm gonna move this over, pull the other car back in, and then I'm gonna wait for that starter to show up so I can actually do an A/B test to see how it actually performs. I don't even know what I'm talking about there. I need to do the starter. That's it. As soon as I do the starter, I can change the fuel tank as well. I've got the fuel tank ready to go right there. And then we're in business. I don't really want to, I mean, I could try to run it, but this gas is at least 5 years old from anybody's guess, if it even has any gas in there. So we're going to pull it back in. We're going to pull the car in, and then, yeah, tomorrow I'm going to continue to hit up the paint, see how much of it I can bring back, and let's go from there. So today we're gonna work back on the Mustang. We finally got our starter in. It only took 6 days on next day shipping, so that was cool. We ended up with 2 of them. Funny enough, because I reorder them when I don't get things in time. And yeah, that's what we ended up doing. So I'm gonna do the starter on this, okay? That should be able to get this fired up. But if not, I do have a full fuel tank. I might also put the fuel tank in. Probably will also put the fuel tank in because, as we previously had said, the last known time that this vehicle is registered was like 2020. So with that being said, it's 5 years old. That tank is probably full of varnish and crap. I didn't get a fuel filter, but I probably should go grab a fuel filter for this and put it in at the same time that I'm doing the tank, put in some fresh gas, and then actually this thing should fire up, presumably. But we will see shortly if that is the case or not. But yeah, now that I've got this in the car, look at how clean all of that is. And I just changed a couple of terminals on the battery, and everything was good to go. So we're gonna change the starter in this. I want to see if it'll actually crank. If it'll crank, we'll put a fuel tank in it, and then if it put a fuel tank in it and it cranks, hopefully it fires. Let's take a look. But I'm gonna get all that done, and then we're gonna circle back. So, rolling under the car, we kind of see something a little interesting here. We see this ground wire just not attached at all. So I'm gonna change the terminal on this, and we're gonna see if the factory starter will work. If not, no big deal. We'll just change the starter. I already got 2 of them. So it should be pretty decent. Overall, this car is pretty good for what it is. Got a little bit of rust on the spot on the shock towers, as you can see up there. But with that being said, I'll have my buddy Cody come over and we'll probably just box those in and be good to go. But to be honest, everything else about this car, even the core support's just totally unhit, and it's in really good shape. So we're gonna probably, like I said, take care of those shock towers. But I'm gonna repair this and I'm gonna see if I can crank it. Well, we just changed the little eyelet on the cable, and unfortunately didn't fix it. So now we're putting a starter in. Well, we got it out. Funny enough, the actually mounting tab for the top one actually broke off and the stud broke, but the stud is still hanging out. So we're just going to attach to the bottom. This motor isn't hanging out in the car for very long, but also we're just going to double check. Looks pretty good. So we're good to go. Starter is done. I'm going to try to crank it now and see if it actually will crank or not. All right, good news. She cranks. The starter was probably just totally seized because it was apparently on the bottom of the ocean. Now I'm going to change the fuel tank, and then hopefully we'll be able to get this thing running. Okay, so we just wrapped up putting in the fuel tank, put in fresh gas. I accidentally spilled like probably 3 or 4 gallons of varnished gas all over the floor. Also, we did change the wheels and tires from the one that were on the green Mustang, just because. So we did the starter in the fuel tank, which included the fuel pump, fuel sender, the whole 9 with there. We did discover, just because I noticed the brakes were not great when we picked it up, I filled up the reservoir with brake fluid and found a couple of brake leaks in the front brake lines, but not worried about that today. What we're going to do today is we are going to try to get this thing fired up and see if it runs. So I'm going to go ahead and try and start it right now. We're going to probably have to prime it a couple times. There's still the possibility that I need to go up to the store and get a fuel filter for this, because I put the whole pump and tank in there, but it still did have the old stuff, but I didn't really try to fire it a whole lot with the new starter in. So let's give it a shot and see what we have. Well, it runs pretty quiet too for what it is. So, all right, we're gonna let this run a little bit. It's got a pretty good stumble. Probably smell the bag fuel. Let this run for a little bit and then we'll okay, and here she is. We went ahead and blocked off the lines that were broken for right now. So I have to go to the store tomorrow. Fortunately, they're already closed tonight. But here she is. And honestly, it's pretty nice because you just go ahead and reach the key in. Make sure she's neutral. And burrs right to life. Honestly, pretty good. Some just gross stuff coming out of the exhaust, but we kind of knew that going in just because there's going to be some stuff. So we're going to call it there for tonight. Tomorrow we're going to bang out 2 front brake lines. We may even install the Cobra brakes. I'm kind of going back and forth on that, deciding on what I want to do. But these brakes are going to be pretty much shot. I know that. So with that being said, we're going to wrap it up for tonight. And let's circle back tomorrow. Hey guys, Zach here. If you've enjoyed this content, please consider leaving a like, dropping a comment below, or even clicking that subscribe button. All right. Thanks so much. So today we're back out working on the Mustang. We've actually been really busy. So we've gotten a couple things done. Namely, we got these new brakes all done. Sorry, just getting it all focused for you. So we got the calipers. We've actually had these for a while sitting on the green car. New copper lines, stainless steel braided wire. Coming up here to the master cylinder, even though it looks a little wet, everything is all good to go. With that being said, we've got new lines. Pretty much everything's ready to rock and roll on this. The only thing, I don't have any rear brakes hooked up as of right now. We did get both sides done currently, because when we took it out for a test drive the other day, only the front left brake was working. Now this gets it safe enough to actually reasonably drive without any major flaws. Additionally, spent a whole bunch of time working on the back end of the car today. And primarily what we've been working on is put a black spoiler on, because this red spoiler is super pitted, unfortunately. So probably gonna rock the black spoiler for right now. We also took a whole bunch of polish to the trunk lid. Everything turned out really good there. Spent way too much time figuring out how to change out the lock on there. The short story, sorry, let me go flip back here. You end up taking off these 4 bolts right here. This whole header panel comes out. It gives you access to the rivet that is up here for the lock cylinder. You drill the rivet out and then you can change it out. So I actually took the lock cylinder from the other car because I didn't have a key for this one, so now trunk's good to go. This being like a full manual car, pretty much the only automatic thing it has on there is mirrors and air conditioning. It didn't even have a door, it didn't even have a trunk popper. So with that being said, we got that all squared away, so it's all good to go now. So now, and I did have to run a spacer up front. Those are hub-centric spacers to run these wheels, just because the offset, unfortunately, is not deep enough to accommodate the wheel. So that being said, I'm just gonna go ahead and wrap up today by bolting on the wheels. This will all be good to go. And then we went ahead and ordered a couple of things. So where this car is ending up, where it's going to be, at least where I envision it, is this car will ultimately end up with a 5-liter. So at some point in time, I'm even thinking about going crazy. I've never had a carbureted vehicle. I don't really count the 83 that we have. So I'm thinking about doing it as a carbed 5.0. It's going to make the swap way, way easier. I can go and track out down all the wires that basically I need to keep everything working as it should. And I really can pretty much leave most of it all together. So the only thing I'm going to have to hook up, I already have an HEI distributor for a 5-liter, so I just need an intake and a carburetor and a 5-liter. So that being said, we're waiting for one of those Explorer 5 liters to drop at the junkyard, because they come with GT40P heads, which are basically the best factory head outside of GT40 head, which are hard to find. The GT40Ps just have a weird bolt pattern, but you can just get headers for those, so it's really not a big deal. So I'm waiting for one of those to drop at the local junkyard. Runs me about $250 to get it that way, and then we're going to drop it in the car. I am going to take the AJE K-member that I have in the green car, which is actually the same K-member that I have in the 86 Fox body. I've ordered 5-liter mounts, but I've also ordered 3 8 mounts, since I don't really want to take this motor out and basically make this a roller until I've got a motor for that car all ready to go, all gone through. I'm pretty much going to leave it stock, but change like the oil pump. So with that being said, I'm going to wait until I have that motor to actually pull this motor out. So in the meantime, I spent the $75 or so, maybe it was $80, on the 3.8 engine mounts that'll fit on my K-member. So I'll be able to pull out all of that stuff. We'll be able to put in the coilovers. We'll be able to put in all the goodies that I have on the green car and kind of wrap up on that car a little bit more. And then we'll be ready for the 5-liter whenever I actually end up getting it. So that's kind of where we're at for right now, but I'm going to stick these wheels on, and then we're going to circle back probably once I buff out the rest of this side of the car, because I have not done anything to this side of the car, and really this hood is a tragedy. I might end up going with the black hood I already have on the other car, and then maybe wrapping this in black as well. And as you can kind of see how bad this paint is from sitting outside, these are a couple of rust spots that popped up, but you can see where I buffed over here and then where I still haven't been able to. And this is actually like, it's gritty, if you can hear that, like sandpaper. So not ideal, but we're getting there. We got all the locks switched out, so now I've got more or less a fully functioning car once I have the brakes good to go. And we could try to do a brake stand, since I'll have front brakes and no rear, but this little 3.8 is pretty pitiful, if I'm being honest with you, so I highly doubt that it will do that. But I'm gonna get these thrown on, and then I will talk to you guys once I buff the rest of this car. And one last thing, I know I've already kind of preached the praises of these. This is the Cobra setup, so it's like the 13-inch rotor with the Cobra brake calipers or Mach 1 calipers. This whole setup right there just bolts on. Here is the stock 94, I think actually this is like 94 to 98 V6 or GT. More or less got the same single caliper, single piston caliper, and puny 10-inch rotor. So big step up there. Should be a much better braking experience. What is going on today, guys? So today we're back out in the garage with the Mustangs. So we've got the green car in the garage as well as the red car, but we're gonna probably take the red car out because we're gonna start disassembling the green car even more than we already have. So in the interior here of the red car, went ahead and put in the double-din display, all that stuff, fixed up the gauge cluster real good, got the 98 specific center console in with the better cup holders, and yeah, it's starting to slowly come together. We still need to do full audio upgrade on that car, so I need to actually pull the speaker deck out of the green car. But with that being said, since we've already done the brakes and taken the wheels off the car, I really want to pull that it's a 373 rear end out of that car. It's a 373 8.8, and replace the 7.5 that's in this car, as well as take all the control arms out and whatnot out of that car and move it all kind of over here. So I've got a grand master plan because I have 4 Mustangs currently, and we're trying to go down to 3. And we're gonna take the best of 3 cars and make them 2 really good cars. So here's the short list of what we need to do. So we need to remove all of this from the 96. Most of it should come off without any big issues. K-member is going to go in the 95. I've got these cool AJE 3.8 mounts, as well as I've got a set of small block Ford mounts for whenever we small block Ford swap the 95 on there. Need to pull the shocks, remove the engine and trans. We're going to sell those. Rear end's going to go in the 95. Control arms are going to go in the 95. Sway bars are going to go in the 95. Speaker box is going to go in the 95. Exhaust, unsure for right now. But then, after all of that is said and done on there, we're going to get the 83 in here. We need to take the spindles actually off of this red car and put them on, because you need 94, 95 spindles for any older Fox body, so 79 to 83. If you want to 5-lug swap it without doing anything with the K-member, not having a bunch of crazy bumps here, you need 94 to 95 spindles, which is the entire reason we actually bought that car. So we've got an aluminum radiator sitting over there in the corner that we're going to put in. We're going to put in another 8.8 that I actually had picked up from the junkyard right here. This is again another 94, 95 unit that's going to go into the 83 on there. And then I need to get some parking brake cables and new control arms. So for the most part, we've kind of got everything that we kind of need. I actually still even have my Maximum Motorsports steering rack that's going to go in, or I'm sorry, steering shaft that's going to go in here. Once we get the aftermarket K-member in, we need that one because it's expandable. So I actually had already bought it for the green car, and now we're just going to use it for the red car. So what I'm going to likely do then, all this makes sense, is both the 83 and the 95 are going to be 5-lug cars, and we're going to take the old parts and at least keep the green car a roller, because I'm going to try to sell it. So I'm going to sell the motors, sell the trans, hopefully sell the car as a roller, even if it's on the older stuff. I'm going to use the K-member from this red car, put it back underneath the green car, so at least it has something to roll on. It should be pretty straightforward and simple to do, hopefully. But with that being said, we need to go ahead and start. I would like to pull out the rear end. I might get a little aggressive and try to pull the motor and trans out of this. Now the cool thing is, with the K-member, at least how it's all set up as of right now on there, I don't have a lot hooked up on the bottom side of this green car, so I can in theory just drop out the K-member. It's just 4 bolts up front and I think another 2 in the rear, and the whole motor, basically engine cradle, will come down, and then there's just 2 more bolts on the transmission. So it's pretty straightforward to just drop the whole thing out. If we drop the whole thing out, I can put this on dollies and it'd be actually pretty straightforward and simple. We might also need to pull off the bumpers and whatnot, but all that stuff gets much, much easier if I pull the whole driveline out of this car first and then get, hopefully, the rear end out. So I'm going to start working on this, and it's going to be quite a bit of work. And let's circle back once I have a bunch of this stuff pulled out, but I'm going to be working pretty long today to get all that done. Okay, so motor and trans are out of the car. Rear end is out of the car in only 3.5 hours. And I did pull all of my AN line, because originally I was gonna do an AN setup with this car and just didn't end up going through with that. So not a big deal, but we've got everything pretty much completely stripped out from the underneath side. So now I'm gonna be able to put this on rollers, and then I can finally start on the red car. So I'll have to decide how far I want to get with that today, just because this is quite a bit of work already. But with that being said, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm pretty much ready to slam in the rear end of the car. That's pretty simple. Pretty much no issues at all there. And then the only other thing that we really would have to do would be to get the K-member installed on that car, and that would pretty much wrap all the stuff up from that car and be able to let me pull in the 83 and start to pull everything off of that. So that one, we're still waiting on a bunch of parts. I've got a rear end over here that I'm going to send off to the sandblaster here in a little bit. So we still got a decent amount of stuff to go on this, but we're kind of closing in, thankfully, on getting this red car all wrapped up, getting the green car kind of out of here. But at the same point, I've got so much junk in there, miscellaneous interior parts that I was trying to piece together, all that other fun stuff. So it's gonna be a little bit of time before I can actually get this fully done, but we have the time, thankfully. So I'm gonna keep working and we'll come back. So today we're gonna tackle on the 95, it's just the V6 Mustang. We're gonna tackle swapping a 7.5 rear end out of the car and putting in an 8.8 out of a GT. So what we're going to be doing is I have this 8.8 ready to go out of my 96. It does have the Cobra brake package, so it's got the vented rotors on there, it's got the different plates, and then the different caliper bracket. So I didn't get different anti-mones. I actually just slotted these, if you can kind of see in there. I slotted them and then just used a washer. Should be totally fine. But this is a 373 rear end. I did already put spherical bushings in it. And a aftermarket cover, because I don't like the stock covers that go on them. So this is going to go into this car, and then this 7.5 is going to go out the door. We might save the axles. Now the cool thing about these 7.5s, and really any 94 to 98 Mustang, if it's a V6 with a 7.5, if you pull the axles out, you can actually just directly install those right into a Fox body rear end, and you'll end up with a 5-lug. So the only other thing that you need to grab are these backing plates, not the aluminum ones, more like this one off this 8.8. You'd also need to pull these off when you're at the yard. If you're pulling these out at the yard, you can get these for $100, or you can pull a whole rear end like I did. For that one, I think I paid like $175 or something like that for a full 8.8. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started on this. We're also going to be swapping in a bunch of my other parts that I've got laying out here from that other car. We've got tubular control arms. We've got some UMI sway bars. I've got the cables that'll just hook directly in, as well as an aftermarket coilover setup that we're going to rock and see how it actually does. I think I picked that setup up probably a year or two ago for about $300. The sway bars I paid $150 for locally. I don't even know if they make them anymore. And then the tubular control arms are about $80. So overall, this is basically a $500 budget upgrade to the back of this V6 car. It's going to make it way, way better. It's going to give it positive traction since the 7.5 is an open. And it should be pretty good. Plus, with these wheels that I've got, I do need to run spacers, and I did confirm on the rear because I just pulled them up. It does rub a little bit. This is going to solve a bunch of different problems. So we're going to go ahead and start swapping this rear end in. The only thing that we really need to do is probably remove the drive shaft, as well as jack the car up and get it all started. So we're going to get cooking on that. It's a pretty straightforward process overall, so let's get started. Hey guys, Zach here. If you've enjoyed this content, please consider leaving a like, dropping a comment below, or even clicking that subscribe button. All right, thanks so much. Okay, so if you're going to attempt this type of swap, what you need to start out by doing is pulling off your wheels. You're going to need to pull off the rear calipers as well as the rotors to be able to get access to the lower control arm bolts to be able to at least pull the rear end out. Since I'm also going to be changing the control arms, I'm going to do a little bit more work, but that's step one. So I'm going to go ahead and pull all this off. Now my rear brakes, I have the rear brakes plugged right now just because some of the lines are rotted and I just pulled them out. Wasn't going to deal with the rear end because I was getting ready for the swap. So if you are doing this, you will likely need to deal with your brake fluid situation for the rear. So what I would recommend at a very minimum, just take a pair of vice grips, go find your brake hose in the rear, and just pinch them off. That'll at least stop the additional flow of the brake fluid. Now, since I believe the hose is different from the 7.5 to the 8.8, you'll have to probably still go through and bleed everything, but that'll at least keep it so your master cylinder isn't just draining and draining and draining, causing a big mess for you, and makes it a little bit easier to deal with. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to pull the rear tires off on both sides, calipers, rotors, and then we'll circle back so I can show you the next steps. Okay, so we went ahead and got the brake calipers off and the rotors. So you do have to undo the hoses to be able to pull the calipers out on there. There's a little E-clip on the back of here to get the brake the brake line off. So we'll get that off separately. We did have to pull the shocks. We had to remove the shock bolt. So the inner piece, the actual bolt head, is a 15 millimeter. The outer is an 18 millimeter. Pretty much everything on this rear end is either a 10 mil, a 13, a 15, or an 18. So all of the control arm bolts are 18s. Oh, I apologize. The drive shaft bolts, the 4 drive shaft bolts on there, they're a 12.12 millimeter. So if you take them off with a 1/2 inch, they'll come right off, and that's exactly what I've already done on there. I just need to knock it off. So if you are not in the rust belt, the next step would be to remove the control arm bolts. So they're, again, 18-18. Inners are the nuts, outers are the bolts on there. If you are in the rust belt, well, you know what? Good luck, because if it doesn't come off, you're cutting the control arms. So I am going to try to remove the control arms up at the front. I've already tried the rear end of this part right here. I may need to get the air hammer out, but we'll circle back after I have this rear end dropped with the control arms out, because right now that does not pertain to the install of the 8.8, but it's pretty straightforward. So you've got 4 locations for control arms on this, and then you got the 4 bolts in the drive shaft. Okay, now once you got all of your control arms out on there, kind of like what I did, if you're going to end up doing like a clean swap, you'll end up something like this. I did have one of those C's, and it seems like every one of these that I do, these inners, like that one specifically, always seizes, like the inner, or I should say the lower control arms, but the front ones never usually seem to be a problem. They usually pretty much always break free, and then they're pretty good. So what we're going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to sweep up, because I've got a lot more rust and junk and whatnot, because I had to cut that out. But we are going to go ahead and start to install our lower control arms, the tubulars, and then we'll be able to get ready to go ahead and slap that bad boy in. Once we get the rear end in, then we'll get everything taken care of with all of the brake lines. It seems to me, at least in my opinion, that's usually the easiest route, because once you've got everything in, it's all good to go. I am, just because the brake lines, or I'm sorry, the emergency brake cables on this are seized, I am going to cut these out and replace them. I do have a set ready to go for them. They're just standard units, so I'm not really going to show that, just because it doesn't really matter. Ideally, if this was if you were just swapping over, I would say this: if you have good calipers in the back end, the calipers are all the same across V6, GT, and Cobra. The only thing that changes is the brackets. So if you were saving all of your brakes, you may not even have to touch this part of the project, but with that being said, I unfortunately do. So I am going to get those all cut off, all removed, all ready to go, and then I'm also going to go ahead and get the new control arms at least put in place, so we can start working on getting the rear end in, and with the rear end, getting in the rear springs, which always seem to fight me. I don't know why, but they do. So we're going to start working on that right now. Okay, so we went ahead and got all the control arms in. We've actually got the parking brake cables, the new ones that I pulled off the other car. We've got those installed. So now last thing to do, put the rear end in. I did go ahead and also remove the rear shocks, which you're not going to be able to see in here. It requires you to pull out the inner panels of the trunk liner to get in, if you still have them in there, and then it's just one nut up top. So I'm going to go ahead and slide this whole unit in, and hopefully it shouldn't fight me too much. Generally speaking, you want to leave all of the bolts loose. So every single control arm right now is loose. I am using I think it's Super Glide on there. It's a silicone based lubricant on there. Sorry, Super Lube. Okay, it's a synthetic grease. It's specifically to work with these poly control arms that I've got. So I've been lubing everything there, and then I've been using some anti-seize on all of the bolts to make sure they don't seize like the last one did, seize in the control arm. So I'm going to go ahead and get this fully installed, and then we'll come back in. Shouldn't be too big, but again, what we're going to do first, we're going to get the entire differential, the rear end back into the car with all the control arm bolts. I'm going to retorque them all. Off the top of my head, I want to say it's like 80 foot-pounds, something along those lines. Then I can actually fix the exhaust, and then finally at the very end, I'm going to deal with all the brakes. I'm going to have to make some brake lines. Shouldn't be too bad, but something that needs to be done. Okay, so we went ahead and we have all the control arms all snugged up. It's all the rear end's basically fully in now. So we need to put the drive shaft back in. I do need to still correct a couple of issues with the parking brake cables, but on top of that, then we can start working on the brake lines. That'll all be pretty straightforward and simple. I just need to really get after it. So I'll end up putting also the sway bar on as well at that exact point in time that we're doing the parking brake stuff, so that should be next. But actually what I need to do right before that is I need to put on the rear shocks. Once the rear shocks are in, and the springs, I should say, at the same point. Once the rear shocks and springs are in, then we're going to be in a pretty good spot where I could start working on the brake lines and get all of that all wrapped up. So we're really not super far off as of right now from getting this completely wrapped up. All right, now with everything said and done, we've got the springs in, we've got the parking brake cables all set up, we've got pretty much everything fully installed. As of right now, the only thing we have left to do is do the brake lines. I thought that I had the right one. I had the wrong one, so I ordered that. It'll be here tomorrow, and hopefully we'll be able to get that whole rear end wrapped up nice and tight. So now I'm going to go ahead and retorque the wheels on the back of it, get it out of the garage for the night, and call it a day. Okay guys, so it's the next day. So the last thing that we need to do is we need to go ahead and change this little gear on the Speedo, because everything is working well for that rear end, but the speedometer's off. So it's a 23 tooth speedometer gear I got from LMR. Comes with the gear and this little lock, as you can kind of see. Basically you just pull off the, let's see if I've got an example right here. You just go ahead and you pull off. This is very similar to this TR3650. It is not the exact thing, but right here basically you've got the similar type sensor on the T5. You pull that off, there's a little gear on there. So I'll go ahead and jack the car up, and then I'll show you exactly what we're talking about with that little gear. Okay, so if you have a T5 transmission, this is the unit right here. It looks like it's just a standard 13 millimeter. I'm gonna go ahead and get that removed, and I'll show you the gear. Okay, so wiggling it back and forth, as you see, that's the Speedo gear itself right there. There's the little clip. So you just basically take a flathead screwdriver, you pry this up. Let's see if I can do it one-handed. Oh. There we go. Come on. Clip is off. This slides off just like that right there. We replace it with our new gear, which is right like this. I don't know if it's going to be able to see in that connector right there. And then there is a little calculator on the LMR website, so you can see this one happens to be a 23 tooth for our 373 rear end with the wheels that we have. So I'm going to go ahead and get that installed, and then we'll put it right back in. Okay, we've got the new Speedo teeth installed, so we're going to go ahead and slide this gently up there. Now, if you're making a big jump on an older T5, you may need to also change out the Speedo gear on the shaft that's in the transmission. Thankfully, on this one, we don't need to do anything. We're able to just use the 23 tooth, and we are good to go. So that's pretty much it. So now I'm just going to wiggle it back and forth, get to seat a little bit more, put the bolt in, and we should be all set. And there we go. Our 373 rear end 8/8 swap Mustang should be good to go. I am still waiting on a brake hose. Once I get the brake hose in, I'll wrap up the brake lines and bleed the brakes. It's pretty straightforward and simple. There's really no other confusion of what's going on. Even got the parking brake hooked up, so we're in good shape. So that's going to wrap up the rear end swap on this car. So today we're going to start on the K-member and front coilover swap on this 95 Mustang. So this is a fairly in-depth install of what it takes. Essentially what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to completely blow apart the front axle itself. You're going to need to remove the steering shaft. you're going to need to do quite a bit of stuff with that. So what I found with these cars is if you do run an aftermarket K-member, you are going to need an aftermarket steering shaft. So this one's from Maximum Motorsports. The K-member, so an AJE K-member. We do have BMR lower control arms on it, and then we have the 96 and up spindles, which will be totally fine for what we're working with, as we have everything kind of what we need to make it all work. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get started on getting this all swapped in. So my goal is going to be that I'm going to unbolt this rack, and I'm going to reuse the rack that's on the car existing. This rack that we have right here is a spare. I'll probably end up putting it back on the other car to make it a roller, but it's pretty, like I said, this is a little bit of more of an in-depth type of install. So we need to go ahead, get the car jacked up. We need to completely blow apart the axles, the wheels on each side. Thankfully, I don't need to bleed the brakes again. I can just go ahead and hang them up on each side, so that'll at least save me a little bit of time. These spindles are actually going to be going on our white 83 Mustang, so this accomplishes a bunch of different topics of what we're trying to get done with this car. And then lastly, this will also give us the bones to be able to swap into 302 later on. So being that I have an aftermarket K-member, again, this AJE unit, I was able to get AJE motor mounts specifically for a 3.8, so now I've got 3.8 5-liter and the 4.6 5-liter Coyote and 5.4 modular mounts for these K-members. So I've got this K-member also in my 86 Mustang. I like it quite a bit. It offers so much more adjustability, as well as it offers so much more room to work on things. Exhaust is a little bit cooler because you don't have all the sheet metal covering it, and starter changes are super easy. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started working on this. Again, I need to blow apart the entire brake systems on each side. Then I need to basically get it all the way down to control arms, and then I can go ahead and start working on getting the car jacked up, get the hoist over here. We're probably going to jack up directly on the motor itself on there, so that I can release the motor from the control, or from the motor mounts themselves. And from there, after all that is said and done, we can drop the whole K-member out, put the new K-member in, and we'll be good to go. So I've done this before without removing the motor on the car on my 86. It's pretty straightforward and simple. This will be heavier because I have the I've got the control arms and the spindles on it, but it really shouldn't be too much of a big deal for me to be able to do this. So hopefully by the end of this, hopefully by the end of tonight at least, I'll have the brakes completely blown apart, ready to go. If I can hopefully get in there and remove the motor mounts, that would be also ideal. If I can get them removed at least from the engine of the car, that would be ideal, to just have it all kind of sitting there, and then I can go ahead tomorrow, bring over the hoist, get everything set up, and then get everything good to go. So we're going to start working on that tonight, and I'll circle back after I have everything removed, and then we'll be in a pretty good shape. Okay, so we went ahead and got the springs out, we got the spindles off, we've got the caliper out of the way, basically everything out, including the shock. On there, I've got the calipers hung on both sides. So now what we need to do is there's two bolts that go up through the cradle right here. I've already taken them out on this side. This is, unfortunately, generally how they come out when they are rotted, like that. And then you end up getting new bolts, something like this, okay? So that is what we are working on as of right now. Additionally to those two bolts that are in the cradle, you have two additional bolts right here, and then that's on both sides. So you have 4 total bolts. Again, 2 up here, 2 here, and then outside of that, you've got the steering rack that needs to come off, and the motor mount. So this is a motor mount nut. We can get to that right through here. It ends up being a 22 millimeter. I think these are all 18 millimeters, and the 18 millimeters that go up through the cradle are captive. So it's pretty straightforward and simple. So this is actually going way better than I thought it was going to go. So I'm actually probably going to go ahead and pull this out tonight and potentially get the new one bolted in tonight. But we'll see. So typically speaking, when I do it this way, what I do is I bring in my engine hoist over there, and then I have a belt, like a serpentine belt, and we'll throw it around the intake, basically just to keep the motor up while we're putting in the whole piece. Alternatively, which I would probably not recommend, you could just jack up directly on the oil pan. And again, I don't recommend that for obvious reasons, but with that being said, it is an option for us to do. So I'm going to continue to work on this, and then when I drop it out, I'll zoom back in so you guys can see the drop, and then I can show you how I put this back in. But overall, going pretty swimmingly. I'm still dealing with the driver's side strut tower being a little bit rusty and rotted, so I've been vacuuming it out and kind of clawing out a lot of stuff in there. What we'll end up doing is we'll end up plating that so that it's not an issue going forward. All right, so we went ahead and we got the rack and pinion pulled out. We've got all the bolts out, so now it's just time to drop it down. Hey guys, Zach here. If you've enjoyed this content, please consider leaving a like, dropping a comment below, or even clicking that subscribe button. All right, thanks so much. Okay, so next up, now that we got the K-member out, we need to go ahead and pull off the motor mounts as they are now, and then we'll put on those new motor plates. And it's gonna actually tidy that up quite a bit, and you're gonna see how much more room there is. It is incredible how much more space there is once we put this in. Basically, all of this will still be able to be seen. As you can see, that's our brand new starter that we got going on there. I do need to switch out that bell housing. I do have an additional one, but to be honest, I'm probably not even gonna do that until we actually pull the entire motor to be swapped for a 302. Okay, so we went ahead and got everything all cleaned up. We've got the mounts in place, as you can see right there. So they actually work pretty good. It looks like the extended portion, the part that comes out more, is the front side, and then the recessed is the rear. So now I'm gonna go ahead and get this all installed. This is pretty straightforward and simple. I went ahead and used some more of that super lube on the poly bushings. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna roll it underneath there. Then I'm gonna go ahead and get the engine just bolted up. Just doesn't need to be super tight or anything like that. Get that bolted up first. Then I'm gonna jack up the whole thing and then start reconnecting all of the 8 points. So it's a pretty straightforward process, to be honest with you. And once we have this, we got a K-member in the car again. So on the plus side, that one's completely out. We're all good to go on this one. We might put that one back in the green car just to make it a roller, and then we'd be in good shape. So I'm gonna go ahead and stuff this one back in, and let's keep moving. Quickly, I did have to flip these mounts side to side. You do need them pointing downwards. That was a simple mistake for me. I had to reference the 4.6 over there in the corner with the downward facing, and this looks to be much better, so I should be able to get this fully installed now. Okay, well, we've got it all in there. It's under its own weight now. And yeah, dude, that is just like, it's so much better. And then this gets tucked up, but right now I've got that just kind of down for the sway bar. So now I'm going to reassemble both sides. I do need to figure out something that I didn't realize how bad the tie rods are in there, but I believe I put new tie rods in on this one. So we'll probably swap that into this, make a big mess, and everything else. So I'm going to put together back the wheels real quick, and then we can start working on the steering. So actually, very, very good. So today we're hopefully wrapping up quite a few things here on the 95 Ford Mustang. We did get the old rack and pinion completely out. We did also get the sway bar fully installed, so all that goodness is involved. But right now we are working on the steering. So this is the steering rack from the 96 that we had. It's a lot cleaner than the other one that I had. I had already replaced the outer tie rod ends, but these actually shut up, so these are our bump steer kit. So what this is this allows you for lowered vehicles to adjust the bump steer basically as the wheel travels up. So actually, let me come back up here. How this design works, since this is where your tie rod connects, when the wheel comes up, you will basically end up, what will eventually occur is when the suspension decompresses, your wheels will tuck in. So this is designed to hopefully mitigate that as much as possible. Now, typically speaking, and I'll go through when I put this in, but generally speaking, you want the tie rod end to be about parallel with your lower control arm. So that's the easiest way to describe it. Being that this is 96 to 98 spindles, but we've got an aftermarket cam member, basically everything should line up pretty well. But we're gonna go ahead and slap this in, get the fluid lines fully installed. We're gonna put on this beautiful Maximum Motorsports collapsible steering shaft, and then we should be in really good shape. And again, don't forget, this 3.8 is not sticking in this. I'm not doing this to keep it 3.8. So let's go ahead and get started and put the rack and pinion in. Okay, we got the rack and pinion installed, got the lines hooked back up on there, and as you can see, we need to dramatically shorten the distance on these just because they are probably at least 2 inches out. Not a huge deal, but what we are working on right now is the steering shaft adjustments. So I just went ahead and pulled off this rubber, this plastic insulator. As per the instructions, it looks like I need to cut off that little boot as well per there. So I'm just gonna go ahead and continue getting this whole thing ready to go. And then once everything is good to go, we're gonna go ahead and slap it into the car. Okay, so we had to take a little bit of a break because we needed to transfer this tube on here, and then they recommended RTVing it. You can see right there, we went ahead and applied RTV all the way around. It's set up. It's still a little bit loose, but not a big deal. So now we should be officially done with this shaft right there. And now we can go ahead and put this new one in. So it's pretty straightforward. I mean, at the bottom, you've got this 3 trilobal piece that goes directly onto the intake, or I'm sorry, onto the rack and pinion, and then you just have a singular bolt that goes underneath the dash. So I'm gonna go ahead and slide that into place. It shouldn't be too difficult, and then we can go ahead and start getting the Heim joints all put in, and then we can actually start an in-garage alignment for right now, just using tape measures. Pretty easy and simplistic, and should get us at least in a good spot until I can get an actual alignment done. Okay, so now we have everything all set up for what we need to do. We've got a jack underneath the wheel, so that's going to be simulating the vehicle actually at full droop as of right now. So we did get the steering shaft installed. I will say it was an absolute pain. I had to get the air hammer out, but with that being said, at least we're all done with that. So now we're going to take our unit right here, and unfortunately I'm not going to be able to really turn this a whole lot more, but not a huge deal. You just slide it up underneath. This this dust shield's pretty bent, unfortunately, but that's not, again, a big deal in my opinion. So we're just gonna go ahead and rotate it right like that, so it's actually in. Actually, let me see if I can get a little bit more of a visual real quick. Right here, and this would be a good opportunity. I don't usually like running dust shields, but these ones are in fairly good shape, so I went ahead and kept them. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and install this. These come up from the bottom. So, oh, and we need, okay. So since these come up from the bottom, we just go ahead and put our adjustable on there. Just like that, nice and easy. And now here comes the fun part. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to measure out very simply. It doesn't need to be super precise on there. I have the wheel straightened, so we're trying to not move this in and out a whole bunch. But with that being said, the wheel is in good shape as of right now. So we are going to pull this off, and we are going to look to see what this looks like with all of these installed, to see if it looks about right or not. Again, the goal is for this to be parallel with the control arm. So that's going to be the goal right there. I believe that I need to turn this in a little bit. Basically, you just set this to be flush, and looking at it as of right now, it needs to come in at least ½ an inch. Thankfully, that's not a big deal. We just rotate that in. I'm going to go ahead and get some adjustable wrenches, and then we'll actually loosen this piece up, and then I'll thread in this piece of the Heim joint, at least to get it to the point where I think it needs to be. It's pretty easy to do. You may want to use like AN jaws for this if you're using anything on aluminum, just so it doesn't mar it up. But at the end of the day, this is suspension stuff, so it's not really that big of a deal in my opinion. So we are going to go ahead and get this all put in. I'm going to be constantly referencing my steering wheel to see where we are at. Let's take a look. That looks to be about flush, and that looks good right about there. I'm actually gonna pull it like 1, maybe 2 threads out. Right about there. That looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and give this a tester. We're not going to lock down any of these bolts as of yet because that's for the actual alignment, but we are going to go ahead and tighten this one up. So, as you can kind of see, we're not exactly parallel. You can actually see the tie rod is coming down slightly, so I'm going to remove that nut again, change some of the spacers, and try to get that as close as I can get it. Okay, so we went ahead and adjusted it, and we had to play around with it a little bit, but as you can see, now these two are totally parallel. So now we're just going to have to go ahead and do this to the other side, and then work on our tape measure alignment to go ahead and get this bump steer kit fully installed and ready to go. Okay, we went ahead and got everything installed. I still need to do an alignment, but unfortunately we did need to break out the grinder, and I did need to cut probably, I don't know, a 1/2 inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch off these tie rods to get everything to sit good so that it's actually pointed inward of the car, and then I can expand out with them. But overall, pretty straightforward. I also nipped the back edge of that dust shield so it no longer conflicts with the tie rod end. So I'm going to do it the other side and then do my tape measure alignment. Okay, we went through and we just went ahead and did tape measure alignment. For anybody that doesn't know how to do this, basically what you do is you find the same common point. So I'm using this inner piece right here of the tread. I just went ahead and taped it since I'm the only one out here. Makes it a little easier. You do the front and the rear of the tire. Ideally it'd be equal, but we're not able to get that on this side. And then essentially all you do is you go ahead and you measure out. You make sure that the bar is straight all the way across, so like that one right there. And then you measure exactly where that one would be. So this one tends to be, let's call it 65, maybe in 1/16 right there. Or you know what, we'll call it 65. You do the same on the rear. You go through a bunch of different times, making measurements. You adjust out your sleeve, and then once you get it to about, I like to do just about 1/8 of inner toe, just because that'll bring it in a little bit. It won't be wandering at all. Then you go ahead and snug everything up. You still probably are going to want to go ahead and get this professionally aligned, but I will say, just for something you can do in your garage, it works pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead and snug up all the bolts, and the front end of this car will be done. All right, well that's gonna do it. We went ahead and got the car down on all 4 coilovers, and I will say it looks fantastic. There is so much room. Everything is lubricated. The steering shaft looks good. Everything is great with this. So we did get it dialed within 1/8 of an inch, and man, I will say overall the fitment of that is pretty great. So I still need to go through and do a bunch of stuff on the rear of the car. I need to go ahead and actually put some brake lines in on the rear of the car, put the quad shocks in that were in the other car. So we've got a little bit of work to do, but thankfully not a whole lot left. And yeah, but that's gonna wrap up the front end install in this car. Overall, this is probably one of the more killer 3/8 that's going to be out there on the road. Today we did just wrap up getting all of the brake lines done on this car, as well as went ahead and bled all the brakes. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to make the quad shocks work just because the holes are deciding to spin, but there is all of the brand new brake lines. There's our brake hose. So that's actually the 7.5 hose instead of the 8.8 hose. Typically, there's a little bolt that would have gone in the housing. Since this housing is a 96 housing instead of a 94, 95, unfortunately that bolt hole wasn't there. So I did have to go ahead and use the 7.5 housing, which actually ended up being really straightforward and easy. Went ahead and just took the breather off of the 7.5, put it over there on the 8.8, and then was able to just hook right up like nothing ever happened. So we're gonna go ahead and bolt all the wheels back on this thing, go take it for a test drive and see how she acts. Okay guys, so we've been out and about driving the 95 Mustang, and overall this thing's pretty good. There's a couple of small things to address. It seems like the brakes need to get bled a little bit more, but to be honest, it's pretty decent. And overall, it runs pretty good. The 3.8 runs okay, to be honest with you. I'm not super concerned about that, as you can hear it nice and loud. But it needs a little bit of work, but at the end of the day, it's gonna get 302 swapped and it's gonna be a completely different beast. So we're gonna call that one a wrap. We did the suspension, we did the rear end, we did the brakes. We did a lot of stuff. We did this in less than 2 weeks. So we've been absolutely getting this thing done, and I'm really excited to see how it all turns out. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Hey guys, Zach here. If you've enjoyed this content, please consider leaving a like, dropping a comment below, or even clicking that subscribe button. All right, thanks so much.